All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to DAO Talk. This is DAO Talk Weekly, your one-stop shop for everything DAOs. This is episode number 51. I'm Tommy.
I'm coolhorsegirl.
And Frisson, like we said last week, is deep in the mountains, in the forests of Oregon, somewhere on the West Coast. Feel free to go find him if you're listening to this. If you're listening to this now, he's probably already lost and on his way back to the motherland of Utah, but CSG, how are you? Where are you coming from this week? I feel like every week we're uh, getting you from a different location. Last week was from the basement of a pub in London, I believe. This week, where are you? Where are you recording from?
Yep. This week I'm at someone whose dog I'm sitting's house in Edinburgh, my home. Away from home, I guess. Which
In
is
Scotland.
so good. It's the best here. I'm Scottish, so I have my tartan in hand, and I'm very passionate about my clan compared to a lot of these people. There's like a festival for the whole month of August. So everyone's like making fun of all the tourists who come and like search through the souvenir stores to find their clan, but mine's real. It exists, and I'm here and representing.
I love it. I love it. Oh, well, I'm jealous of CSG. I'm jealous of your jet setting lifestyle, always in different places. Frisian, and you make fun of me for being in the same place all the time, but I'm a homebody right now, out here in North Carolina in the South, which is actually where you're from, right? I'm from near your hometown, which is
Okay,
crazy. And I think
hold
Frisian
on.
too. No, you're not from here. No. Hold on. Frisian's from here. You're from California, but you went to school in North Carolina. I
We
just
all
got
have
my
some
wires
tie.
crossed. You look so offended. I caught it. I caught it. Don't worry.
God, you caught
Um,
it. Do not
I
dare
caught it.
accuse me from being from
But
South.
there's a lot of people I'm learning in crypto from North Carolina, which is like a random place. So if you're listening to this, I've met up with a few people um, who live in the area, but hit me up. It could be,
You can hang out with
it
my
could be
ex. He works for insurance in Charlotte.
absolutely not, unless we can bring him into the bring him into the crypto world. But a lot of traditional finance and traditional fintech in Charlotte. So I figure there's some inroads into the crypto world, so maybe I'll start, you know, maybe I'll use your X as a way in. But speaking of the
Recruiting.
traditional crypto, speaking of the traditional crypto world, let's start with some news from Visa. The Visa crypto team, if you're not familiar, is one of the I would say like leading or one of the more promising um, bright spots in the traditional finance world in terms of getting into crypto. I remember when I first started getting into the space, like Visa was, the Visa team was on a lot of crypto podcasts I listened to. So some news from them. We got a tweet and a quote tweet. Visa is laying out the plan to pay gas with a credit card using account abstraction, Paymaster, USDC, and casually using on-chain correctly. Got to be one word. Yet the thread has less than 100 views early. This is just a quote tweet of a Twitter thread from a member of the Visa team talking about how you can pay gas fees with a Visa card, which is pretty fucking nuts. Which would be pretty sweet too, and in a great way to onboard people to be able to use the underlying rails without having to be a power user, like I think most of us are. And then the quote tweet is Visa crypto team policy is that it's spelled on chain, not on chain. And if you know what I'm saying there, when I say on chain twice, you know the hyphen. We do not recognize the hyphen on DAO Talk. And I think we've done um, I think the space has officially killed on chain with a hyphen. I don't know about what you think about that, CHG, the on chain debate, and also um, this, I like leading off the show with kind of some like broader market or broader like news around the industry as a whole, since DAO Talk is so niche. So we kind of give like an update. Like the space has been very flat right now, like not a lot of volatility, just a lot of ETH's been around that 1800 mark, and we've just kind of been building, which is better than going down. So I feel like maybe we're towards the end of a bear where we're kind of flat. I don't know what the official market term is for that, but I feel like we're at least I feel like Tally internally is kind of a microcosm of the space as a whole, but I feel like we're in the next couple months or 6 months, like going to reach an inflection point in terms of, growth and on-chain degeneracy, which is usually an indicator. So sorry, I just went on a rant, but like on-chain debate, and also, what do you see from like a traditional finance world? I know you've been in the space much longer than me, but has it changed? Has it shifted? What are your thoughts on the market as a whole right now?
Yeah, definitely. For one, I will say, Tommy, as our website beautification manager, the space might not support on hyphen chain, but Tally's front page does, and so
Yeah.
does every single proposal. So we'll move past that one. But I think that's top priority till the end of the week. Oh God, it's in your face. It's in your
Oh wow,
face.
yeah,
There
it
it
is
is.
in our
Yep,
face.
on dash
I'll,
chain.
I'm gonna submit a ticket to fix that live on air, live product
Yeah.
feedback on Dow Talk with Tally. But continue.
We turn these into like internal marketing sessions too much. Yeah, no, this is for one, like the Visa stuff is huge. I have gotten a lot of friends into crypto via Robinhood, and how you could withdraw crypto without paying fees, which was so crazy back in the space years ago and still is today. Like, I know a few of my like non-crypto friends who own crypto that still use Robinhood as like their primary wallet of sorts, I guess. Even though it's also acts sort of more as front end. So yeah, it should be cool. Market as a whole, I'm also really excited about this flatness. Even though it sounds kind of standard, like not super exciting. Even Tommy and I were just like, God, there's nothing crazy going on. Like, what do we break down in DAO Talk today? It's exciting nonetheless because things are actually starting to happen where the bear could be ending, which is massive. I think I've seen this in so many different like little signs, you know. It's always like hindsight 2020, but like someone I know who's looking for a job, like just got a job. Like the flatness, us not knowing exactly what to talk about for DAO Talk, like things are happening and things are happening well. So it should be exciting. I used to watch The Moon, that like super cringe YouTube
The
price
moon.
breaker downer Bitcoin guy, The Moon, Sunny Decree. There's a Bit
Oh yeah,
Boy,
yeah,
those
yeah.
type of
Good boy.
guys.
Er,
Yeah, I've DM'd a few of them on LinkedIn actually. Anyway,
Interesting.
but yeah, like they're sometimes I watch them for old time's sake or background content. But they're like, they get into all these like, oh, it's a downward trending small triangle and it's that wins whatever. But also just working in the space, you see like the signs that I just said mean something is coming. So
Yeah,
definitely good stuff.
yeah.
Visa laying down the law about on chain. Couldn't be a
Love
better
it.
week, could it?
I love it. Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point, or kind of like tangentially about like what to talk about on Dow Talk, and I think looking back on the past, like this is episode 51, so about like a year of episodes. Just like thinking about the content that Frisian and I used to talk about in the beginning, a lot of it was controversy and hot takes and a lot of like superficial stuff that I think if we were still talking about it today, I'd be a little bit concerned and we'd be talking about things in a different light because I feel like nothing was being built or nothing was really being talked about in terms of like, okay, how are we going to professionalize this industry? And, DAOs are never going to be as professional per se as, semantics has traditional industry, but I think that's why everybody is so attracted to DAOs. But I think us not or us having to shift what we discuss on DAO Talk. We talk about like not knowing what to talk about sometimes, and I think that's because we're trying to fit it into the mold of what it was a year ago when we're coming out of a bull into a bear, and everything is very like degeneracy and gambling is very fun to talk about, right? But that's not sustainable long term in industries like professional, real, adult. I don't like saying that, but like respected industries can't be built off of that. There is places for it, and there's places for that to be expressed in crypto, and there always will be, and that's why I love it. Like, just go check out me and you Twitter, CHG, and sometimes Frisian, even though he's toning it down a little bit. But I think not knowing what to talk about has been more like, okay, we're kind of having to shift what we talk about because a lot of the news and a lot of the things that are happening in the DAO space are what most people I think would call boring, but I don't think it's boring. And I think, we've talked a little bit the past couple weeks about how niche this podcast is. And I think if you're listening to this podcast and you're into this space and you're working and you're operating in DAOs, or you're someone who wanting to operate in DAOs, um, the opportunities and the things that are happening and the things that are moving the needle are happening on chain and are happening within these large on chain DAOs and protocols. And you kind of have to dig a little deeper into those to be able to see what is happening below the surface, because it's not sexy and not a lot of people are tweeting or talking about it, because it's about protocol design, it's about on-chain governance, it's about delegations, about paying delegates, it's about rolling out new protocol upgrades, risk management, etc. So I think we're just kind of in a shift of what the content for DAO Talk is. We'll always have the interviews and talking to people building, but knock on wood, there's not a lot of like super sexy, if it bleeds, it leads topics in the DAO space right now. And I think that's just a reflection of like we talk about the bear, but I think we just a lot of times we just say the bear is a bad thing, but I think the bear is kind of like a recalibration and a refocus on building. So you've been through a bunch of cycles, but this is kind of like my first bull to bear and then back up to the top. So it's been a very like interesting experience, and I feel like a lot of people in the space are experiencing it as well. Any
Baby's
thoughts on
first
like how
bear.
to ride it out? Yeah.
Yeah. No, I remember like when I like was in early like uni, and I like there were some massive shifts in Bitcoin particularly. And it was just like a emotional roller coaster where you don't know how to handle it. I was pretty tangentially actually involved in the space. I was just, like seeing my Bitcoin go up and down crazily and thinking I'm rich one day and I'm poor the next. And in extremely, not like, oh, a bit of extra, like, oh, bit tight today. It would be crazy. I've been talking about often, like during the full bowl of like 2020, very early 2022, when I was getting paid in like index token, and it would be like you could 4x your amount in a month. And if you're earning, 5,000 more a month, that would be crazy. It'd go from 5,000 to 20,000. And then that all went away very, very quick. Which is definitely a humbling experience. And I think that maps onto like what we're talking about with DAO Talk, and also probably what is just the reality in a ton of like media pieces in the space, whether they're a podcast or a newsletter, or an article, or even like people's Twitter content, of like this crazy, sexy stuff is sometimes not appropriate or relevant when the space is at somewhat of a, like you said, recalibration. Some could call it a lull, like heads down. I mean, it all depends on connotation. But what's important is like the basics, and that's what we're still hitting, right? Like I try to remind myself when all this crazy shit is happening, like you just go on to Tally. There's some regular proposals happening, like, oh, somebody's doing a grant. It's not all, crazy shit and hacks and people not paying each other. Some of it's like very basic stuff that happens that in like web 2, like,
there,
and that's a
yeah,
good
there,
thing. I think you want a
yeah,
mix of it.
yeah. I mean, there's a lot that's happening. I think if we just go off of what's being submitted as a proposal on chain, like you're gonna be like, a normal person's gonna be like, oh, there's not that much happening. But like, in order to like really see the full, like, it's impossible to see the full, net activity of the DAO ecosystem, because you have to be in the Discords, you have to be in the Twitter, following the right people on Twitter, right? Be in the right group chats, be in the right forums, and there's just the Arbitrum DAO, like being involved in that, like which is what Frisson is involved in, is like a full-time job. Like you can't do that across, like even if you just take like the top 10 DAOs, like which is they're massive, like Uniswap, Arbitrum, Gitcoin pulled together, Optimism, like it's impossible, right? So you're just gonna go, okay, well, let's see what's being submitted on chain and what's being voted on, and usually like it's a lot to even get a proposal submitted on chain. Um, it's pretty easy to think, okay, well, nothing's happening. But like if you look at a traditional corporation, you're not just gonna judge the activity of a corporation based on sweeping legislation that's passed from the board or from the boss, right? You're looking at what's happening day to day. So we're gonna run through, like as I just said, we're gonna run through the major proposals that are being submitted on chain. And then we'll have some highlights from Twitter, kind of just to give everyone a general overview of what's happening in the space. And there's kind of an underlying theme that we're going to get to at the very end around low governance turnout, that we'll talk about at the end. But we're going to point that out with each DAO proposal. Even in these big DAO proposals, we had one that just passed from Arbitrum DAO. We talked about it a few weeks ago around a pluralistic grants program that passed on Tally. Thanks to the Zodiac governor mod, the DAO can now safeguard those funds against potential corruption. Those are the funds in the grants program. So the proposal passed, and I think it was over $1 million were sent to a safe that is now controlled, and has a safeguard against potential corruption if things are passed to like drain the grants program for something that's not actually used. It's the way it's able to be used is through Tally, so you can reclaim the funds at any time using a multi-sig vote on tally.xyz. So if funds are stolen or used in the wrong way, the multi-sig can vote on bringing those back, reclaiming them for the DAO. That's a tweet from Gnosis Guild. We'll look at the actual proposal on Tally, AIP3, non-constitutional, so it wasn't updating the constitution. A lot of the improvement proposals for Arbitrum, AIPs, were around the constitution, like AIP1 and AIP2 are around the constitution, upgrading that as the DAO gets off the ground. Just a reminder, Arbitrum DAO is, I believe, the largest with like over $3 or $4 billion in its treasury. To be used. So this is like that $1 million grants proposal is not even like 1% of the treasury. So again, like if people want to get involved in DAOs, Arbitrum DAO, I would say is like, if I was, not working at Tally and I'm a freelancer and I just want to, get involved in a DAO, become a contributor, I'd start with Arbitrum Optimism, one of the big L2s. But looking at the participation rate, and Sichi will talk about it later, maybe we can kind of tease it, but this is a 98.35% voted for, 0.43% voted against, and 1.21% abstained. And that's total across the entire vote is about 124 million votes. That's 1.2% of the entire circulating, delegated votes across the Arbitrum DAO. Pretty crazy to think about. Yeah, not a lot of voter participation. All the big delegates voted: Frisson, Chainlink God, Olympio, delegate out, or L2 beats delegate account, Treasure DAO. But pretty crazy. Feels like this is the most existential problem we're going to be facing moving forward. Don't go too deep into it because we're going to talk about it. I know you just had a podcast where you're talking about it, but thoughts on that as we scroll through the rest of these proposals?
Yeah, I mean, shit is crazy. Like, so much of it, like, maps onto regular elections in the real world, like, especially in America, where people complain about low voter turnout. But this is a whole different ballgame when you can literally, like, delegate to anyone, which has its implications, that I'm sure we'll get into. But 1.2% is crazy.
Wild, right?
Imagine if that was, like, a regular election,
Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, like Arbitrum DAO is a massive, massive DAO with a massive amount of funds.
Yep.
I think people severely underestimate how easily you can get funding or make an impact on things. Arbitrum DAO is just getting off the ground, so there's not a lot of activity around that. But if you look at something like Optimism, where there's consistently, infrastructure for people to submit for their grants program. Arbitrum DAO's grants program is just getting off the ground, but Optimism has existed. So definitely look to Arbitrum DAO if you're looking to get, a grant funded or funding for a project. Looking at Optimism's active proposals. You see way more. A lot of budget approvals for their grants program for their different seasons. They have two active right now. I think one is a spam proposal, and then one is treasury appropriation. So just the Optimism Foundation's budget for year 2. Going on to Gitcoin. Gitcoin is upgrading to Governor Bravo. Their governor is being upgraded from Governor Alpha to Governor Bravo, something we've talked about on a lot of other podcasts, but we'll link to some documentation around Governor Alpha and Governor Bravo, basically just upgrading to a new iteration. Governor Alpha is the original governor from the Compound DAO. Gitcoin always has a little bit more participation, 5.6% here, which is pretty high for a DAO, but pretty simple proposal here. So that's it from the on-chain proposals this week. A lot of the other proposals are just, risk parameter updates, which we'll go right into from Monet Supply. As a tweet, unpopular opinion, DAO-controlled risk management actually works fine in principle. Some DAOs and service providers have fumbled the bag in certain circumstances. It's a skill issue. And then he says, moving risk management to the periphery is a really interesting approach, and I'm all for experimentation. But DAO risk management doomerism is getting much too fashionable, in my opinion. And then Devin from Uniswap Foundation had a great response. You mean risk management controlled by on-chain vote? Is an assumption that your delegate set remains relatively the same over time, that there's a subset with the context and knowledge to manage risk for your protocol effectively, who inform the rest of the DAO about it. And he replied, in my opinion, delegates shouldn't have to be domain experts in risk. They just need to hire the right experts and monitor performance. Easier said than done, of course. Generally, I believe KISS principle for most risk management engagements. Explainability, fancy models with millions of parameters, saying, explainability is more important than fancy models with millions of parameters. Keep it simple, stupid, KISS. Monet Supply brings up a great point. Friend of the show, former Tally employee, original Tally newsletter writer. Shout out CHG. It goes down to, delegates are important, and they're not just figureheads, but they're delegates, right? You're delegating a task to them, and then they in turn are delegating the tasks to the DAO, right? You can't expect a delegate to have the skill set of an entire board of directors or an entire company. And I think throwing out one very important part of that, which is, setting risk parameters and risk management, and, kind of putting that to the side, because there's been previous failures from different, malicious or just incompetent users is dumb. I think this kind of it's not just related to risk management. I think it's related to the delegate issue as a whole and how DAOs operate as a whole. But it feels very much like a 100-year-old issue, not a DAO issue. Any thoughts on that?
Very true. Yeah. The doomerism, like he points out, on risk management is seriously next level. You see so many like Twitter posts that it's like you see and you're like, oh yeah, so true. And then you sort of dig into it, like we always say, and it's like, what? Where did you come up with that? But yeah, I mostly agree with that. I think the delegate issue, which is also like goes with this underlying theme of like low voter turnout, people relying on delegates, should we rely on delegates? It's all part of the same like question in like big question, right? So yeah, my opinion is with Monet Supply. I think that someone's got to do it. It's often a lesser of all evils, right? But it probably hasn't been sorted out fully yet, which I don't know if it ever will be. Should delegates have an expertise, or can you just be really passionate about the protocol? I don't know.
I think both. I just think it's a matter of, we kind of talked about it before, about it's like you can't have 8 different, you're not an octopus, right? With 8 different brains and 8 different arms. Also, I know octopuses don't have 8 brains, but you know what I mean? Like, you can't be everywhere at once and doing everything at once. It's just not possible. And if you try, like, the one thing you're good at is not going to have or the one thing you're best at is not going to have as big of an impact. So I think it's like, distribute correctly. And I think DAO still, like the DAO model is still not being, utilized to its full capacity, because I think we're all like kind of stuck in, traditional ways of operating. And I think it's going to take a much longer, time than we think to kind of like completely rethink the way, not rethink, but I think the reason we all love DAOs is because it's more of a, or something I've always said is it's more of a natural way of working, a natural way of um, labor for humans. Like this is how humans like to work, like not, being committed to one thing 24/7 and being able to pursue different areas and have ephemeral DAOs and have ephemeral ideas where things work, things don't work, being able to go all in on one thing, but also be working on some other small things at the same time, having, less top-down governance, more horizontal governance. I think we're having to, retrain the way we think and retrain the way we operate. And I think that's why a lot of younger people are, kind of just jump in to the DAO experiment because they kind of get it. And that's the way we've kind of been raised in the way we work, growing up with the internet. But then the other side is a lot of, older people are having to kind of rethink things, or we're not, at least when I talk to people, the older people don't tend to get it as fast as the younger people. And I think that's just the way generations work. So interesting. All right, let's wrap it up with this overarching theme we've been talking about kind of the whole time. And, maybe we're beating a dead horse, but you just had a long podcast talking about just problems in the DAO space with governance and whatnot. One of the bigger things, though, and we've kind of highlighted throughout, is low voter turnout. Well, what did you guys dive deep into? What do you think around low voter turnout? What's something that, obviously low voter turnout bad is the take, but like what can we like actively take from this and move forward? And how can we make this a little bit different than just the low voter turnout bad? Fix it. How can we fix it?
Yeah, I think how like we can make this different is by not comparing it directly to like a regular American election. So I'll get into what that means, but basically I was on a podcast with someone from Cointelegraph, and he was saying like giving me like these hot topics, like what do you think? And he said that he had just spoken to somebody who runs like or he's like a big dog at an RWA DAO. So it's like they have to make real gnarly financial decisions that the vast majority of DAO members are not qualified to make, basically in any way whatsoever. So his argument to the Cointelegraph guy was low voter turnouts are not necessarily a bad thing. Like they get a bad rap. So the Cointelegraph guy goes to me and he's like, "Oh, like what do you think about that? Like maybe that's the real hot take. Like he's speaking the truth, don't you think?" And yeah, no, I disagree entirely. I think like first I'll just say what we're all already thinking, like low voter turnout bad, obviously. Like the point of a DAO is to decentralize as well, and that's antithetical to that. But then I think a lot of people will use this argument of like, well, not everybody's informed about everything, so we should just let those who are informed vote. And I've used that argument in regular political elections, right? Like I'm in America, I've lived there for 6 years, so like why I don't think that I'm informed enough to vote on whether a town near my hometown needs a road or who the mayor should be. Like it's just so far removed from my expertise. So that makes sense. But in that regard, I would be voting for basically whatever one of the two parties, the Democrat or the Republican. What I'm delegating my voice to one of them. So I have two choices. I just think you can't compare DAO voting to that, because there you have two choices. In DAO voting, you have a bajillion choices, right? You can delegate to anyone. So like think about if in your like regular voting in America, you could delegate to your best friend or your housemate or your family member who's far more likely to be on a very, very similar page than you are with one of two members of a political party that you've never met, right? So DAO low voter turnout is much more serious of an issue because it could be solved to at least some degree more than the like American election system. Low voter turnout could be solved, or probably many other election systems too. So I think like apathy, lack of awareness, barriers to participation, whatever form they come in, are gonna live forever. But I think the panacea, hopefully, to that is just this delegation. I think that like Tally's delegation week was massive for that. It was crazy getting like FAQs throughout the week and thinking like, oh my God, how do people not know this? And not in any kind of an offensive way, but it's just like, this is so clearly a cure of some sort or some degree to this really gnarly problem of low voter turnout. And people still don't know that that's like even an option or how it works. So yeah, like I'll just say delegation is the answer to low voter turnout, or at least it's the best answer that we have at this current state. So I hope that that's just being plugged more and more, because you don't have to delegate to someone with a million delegations. You can really just delegate your ARB to your coworker who's likely on the same page as you, or some like expert in the space. It doesn't matter. You have so many options that it's not an excuse to not vote. Like in the American election, at least people are like, well, I don't like either candidate, so I'm not voting. This one, like, do your views stray so far from all, bajillion ARB holders? Like, I mean, yeah, obviously cherry-picked example, and you do have to go through the work of finding a delegate. But if you want to vote and you don't have the knowledge to, there's a solution that's far greater than the one that's available in the regular world of elections. And that's exciting.
Absolutely. Damn, that was a great ending. That's exciting. I love it. Yeah, I think through it all, we talk we criticize a lot, but we love the space and we love working in DAOs and we love building tooling for DAOs. So it's exciting is a great encapsulation of that all. As always, we'll throw all the links in the show notes below. Make sure to go subscribe to the Tally newsletter. Remember, DAO Talk newsletter has been absorbed by the Tally newsletter. We'll get that out every Wednesday for you in written form from CHG herself. Otherwise, we'll see you next week for DAO Talk Weekly episode number 52. Back with the Three Amigos. Virgin will be back from his trek in the Oregon Trail. CHG, it's been an honor. Enjoy Scotland. See you next week.
Bye, guys.
Peace.